The alarms screamed across Terminus 9 when the massive ship crashed into the outer ring. Hyun felt the vibration through the metal floor of the engine room where he worked. The lights flickered. Tools fell from shelves. Then came the emergency broadcast in a dozen alien languages, and finally in Korean. All personnel, evacuate sectors 12 through 18. Radiation warning. Unknown vessel has crashed. This is not a drill. Hyun wiped oil from his hands and looked at the other engineers. They were already running toward the exits. He followed, but slower. After 20 years on this station, he had learned that panic killed more people than accidents. The station was huge. Terminus 9 orbited a dying red star and served as a meeting place for hundreds of different alien species. Humans were one of the newest members, only here for 30 years. They were still considered young and foolish by most others. By the time Hyun reached the main observation deck, thousands of beings crowded against the windows. He pushed through carefully, apologizing in 3 languages. When he finally saw what everyone was staring at, his breath stopped. The ship was bigger than anything he had ever seen. It wasn't just large, it was impossible. The metal looked like it had been grown, not built. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing with a sick yellow light that hurt to look at. One entire section had torn through the station's outer ring like paper. "What is that?" someone asked in the crowd. "Velthros," an old insectoid creature whispered. Its voice carried terror. "The Ancient Ones." The word spread through the crowd like electricity. Velthros. Hyun had heard stories. Everyone had. They were beings from before recorded history. Some species worshipped them as gods. Others told stories of entire planets that went dark when a Velthros passed too close. Station security arrived in their environmental suits. The chief, a large reptilian named Gorash, activated a holographic display. The crowd fell silent. "We have confirmed the presence of one living Velthros inside the wreckage," Gorash announced. "It is dying. The creature is emitting Class 7 radiation. Sectors 12 through 20 are now permanently evacuated. No one is to approach within 500 meters. Can we help it?" a young human voice called out. Hyun recognized her. Hana, a botanist who worked in the agricultural section. Gorash turned his massive head toward her. "Help it. Child, the radiation would kill most species in seconds. Even with our best suits, we would last perhaps 10 minutes. The Velthros is beyond help." "But we can't just let it die alone," Hana protested. "We can and we will. This matter is now in the hands of the Galactic Council. Everyone return to your quarters." The crowd dispersed slowly. Hyun stayed at the window, watching the wreckage. He thought about dying alone. He thought about the last time he had seen his father, in a hospital bed back on Earth, with no family nearby because Hyun had been here, in space, fixing machines. Over the next 3 days, representatives from 30 different species arrived at Terminus 9. They set up camps outside the quarantine zone. They held meetings that lasted for hours. They debated protocols, religious implications, and salvage rights. No one went inside to see the dying Velthros. Hyun watched the news feeds during his breaks. The creature's name was Kelthar. It was over 200 meters tall. Its body was made of a crystal-like substance that produced its own light. That light was fading now. Some scientists said it might last another week. Others said it would be gone in days. The debates continued. A religious faction wanted to wait until Kelthar died naturally, then study the body. A military faction wanted to destroy the creature before it released more radiation. A science faction wanted to attempt contact, but from a safe distance, using robots. Everyone agreed on one thing. No living being should get close to Kelthar. On the 4th day, Hyun finished his shift in the engine room and walked to the quarantine zone. He didn't tell anyone. He didn't make a plan. He simply walked. The barriers were easy to see. Bright red holographic walls marked the danger zone. Armed guards stood at every entrance. Warning signs flashed in every known language. "Deadly radiation. Do not enter. Violators will be prosecuted." Hyun stopped at the nearest barrier. A young guard, some species he didn't recognize, held up a hand. "Turn back, human. No one is allowed beyond this point." "I know," Hyun said. I just want to see. The guard's expression softened. There's nothing to see except death. Go home. Hyun nodded and walked along the barrier. He found what he was looking for at Gate 17. A maintenance entrance, older than the current security system. It still had a manual override, the kind engineers installed when they didn't trust computers. He looked around. No guards here. They focused on the main entrances. Hyun entered his engineering code. The door opened with a hiss. He stepped through. Immediately, his personal monitor began beeping, radiation levels rising. He ignored it and kept walking. The corridor was dark. Emergency lights cast red shadows on the walls. Debris littered the floor. Broken metal, shattered glass, something that might have been equipment or might have been art. With alien technology, it was hard to tell. The temperature increased as he moved deeper. His monitor's beeping became constant. The radiation was strong here, stronger than anything a human should survive. Hyun felt his skin tingling. His head began to ache. But he didn't stop. He turned a corner and froze. The corridor opened into a massive space where the ship had torn through 3 decks of the station. And there, lying in the center of the destruction, was Kelthar. The Veltros was beautiful, even dying, even broken. It was the most beautiful thing Hyun had ever seen. Its body looked like living crystal, translucent and glowing from within. But the glow was weak now, flickering like a candle in the wind. Kelthar's head alone was the size of a small building. Its eyes were closed. Its breath came in slow, rattling waves that shook the air. Hyun could feel each breath in his chest like a drum. He started walking forward. His monitor wasn't beeping anymore. It was screaming. The radiation here would kill most species instantly. Hyun felt warmth spreading through his body. Not pain, just warmth. Strange. He climbed over a fallen beam, stepped around a pool of something glowing, kept moving toward that enormous face. Somewhere far away, alarms were going off. Security must have noticed the breach. They would be coming for him. But Hyun didn't care. He was 20 meters away now. 15. 10. Kelthar's eye opened. It was the size of a transit shuttle. The pupil was like looking into deep space, full of stars that weren't really there. That eye focused on Hyun. Really looked at him. Saw him. Hyun raised his hand. "Hello," he said quietly. "You don't have to be alone." He stepped forward and placed his palm against Kelthar's face. The universe exploded into light. Across Terminus 9, every screen suddenly showed the same image. A small human man, standing in lethal radiation, touching the face of an ancient god. No one moved. No one spoke. They simply watched as something impossible began. The moment Hyun's hand touched Kelthar's crystalline skin, every monitor on Terminus 9 came alive. The image spread beyond the station, carried by news drones and communication satellites. Within minutes, 1 billion beings across the galaxy watched a human man stand before a dying god. In the station's command center, Gorash stared at his screens in disbelief. His security team surrounded him, all frozen in shock. "Get him out of there," Gorash finally said. "Send in the extraction team, now." "Sir," one of his officers said, her voice shaking. "The radiation levels are too high. Our suits can't handle it. He should already be dead." "Then send robots, send drones, send anything. We can't just let him stand there." But even as he gave the orders, Gorash knew the truth. The human was beyond their reach now. Whatever was happening in that chamber was beyond all of them. Hyun didn't hear the alarms anymore. He didn't feel the radiation burning around him. The moment his hand made contact with Kelthar, everything else disappeared. Warmth flooded through him. Not the dangerous warmth of radiation, but something else. Something alive. It felt like being a child again, held by his mother during a thunderstorm. Safe. Connected. Images began filling his mind. Not words, not even thoughts. Just pure experience. He saw a planet being born, hot gases cooling into rock, water falling from the sky for the first time. Life crawling from the oceans reaching for the sun. He saw Keltar, much younger, standing on a world that no longer existed. Around the Velthros, other beings like him moved with grace that defied their size. They sang together, and their songs shaped gravity itself. He saw the Velthros traveling between stars. They carried seeds from dying worlds to new ones. They moved comets away from populated planets. They witnessed civilizations rise and fall like flowers blooming and fading. He saw Kelthar alone. The others had gone somewhere Hyun couldn't follow in the vision. Kelthar traveled from system to system, watching new species emerge, looking for something, searching. Then Hyun saw Earth, a blue marble in the darkness. He saw humans building their first radios, sending messages into space. Not threats, not demands, just simple greetings. Hello, we are here. Is anyone else out there? He felt what Kelthar felt in that moment. Hope. After thousands of years of loneliness, hope. The visions faded. Hyun found himself still standing with his hand on Kelthar's face. Tears ran down his cheeks. He understood now. The Velthros hadn't come here to die. He had come looking for the species that still sent messages of peace into the void. I'm here, Hyun whispered. We're here. You found us. A sound came from Kelthar. Not words in any language Hyun knew, but he understood it anyway. Gratitude, relief, joy mixed with ancient sorrow. The radiation around them began to change. The deadly yellow glow shifted, becoming softer. Blue, then purple, then a gentle white light that didn't hurt to see. On the command center screens, Gorash watched the readings change. That's impossible, he said. The radiation levels are dropping. Not dropping, sir, his science officer said. Changing. It's becoming something else, something I've never seen before. Ji-won, the station's xenobiologist, had been monitoring Hyun's vitals from her lab. She ran through the corridors toward the command center, her datapad clutched in her hands. When she burst through the doors, everyone turned to look at her. Look at this, she said, throwing her data onto the main screen. Hyun's cellular structure. It's rewriting itself in real time. The screen showed a microscopic view of human cells. They were changing, adapting, growing new structures that hadn't existed before. This isn't radiation poisoning, Ji-won said. This is evolution, accelerated evolution. His body is learning how to coexist with Kelthar's energy. How is that possible? Gorash asked. I don't know. But I think it's because he's human. Ji-won pulled up another screen, showing genetic comparisons. Look at this. Humans have more mirror neurons than any species we've studied. Mirror neurons are what let you feel what others feel. Empathy, connection. Most advanced species evolved past needing them. They use logic and technology to interact. But humans kept their mirror neurons, enhanced them even. What are you saying? Gorash demanded. I'm saying that Hyun isn't surviving the radiation because he's strong. He's surviving it because he's connected. His body recognized Kelthar not as a threat, but as another living being in pain, and it's adapting to help. In the chamber, more was changing. The debris around Kelthar began to move, not falling, but rising. Pieces of the broken ship floated upward, reorganizing themselves. The crystal growths on Kelthar's body grew brighter. Hyun felt it too. Energy flowing through him. Not his energy and not Kelthar's. Something they were creating together. He understood with absolute certainty that he couldn't let go now. Not yet. Kelthar needed this connection to heal. But Hyun was just one human. One small being trying to anchor a creature the size of a building. He felt himself weakening. His legs trembled. The warmth in his chest began to fade. Then he heard footsteps behind him. You're not doing this alone, a voice said in Korean. Hyun turned his head slightly. Tae-oh, a shuttle pilot he sometimes played cards with, walked toward them. The young man's face was pale but determined. Behind him came Hana, the botanist from the observation deck. Then 2 more humans Hyun didn't know. Then 5 more. The barriers are down, Tae-oh said, stepping up beside Hyun. Security can't stop all of us. He placed his hand on Kelthar's body. Hana did the same. One by one, the other humans added their touch. The effect was immediate. The connection Hyun felt multiplied. The warmth returned, stronger than before. Kael'thar's light grew steady, then bright, then brilliant. On screens across the galaxy, beings of 1,000 species watched humans do what no one else would do. They watched humans walk through deadly radiation without weapons, without suits, without anything except their willingness to reach out. In the command center, an ambassador from the Krellin Confederacy spoke quietly. "I have studied humans for 5 years. I thought I understood them. I was wrong." "What do you mean?" Gorash asked. The Krellin's wings rustled softly. "My species evolved past physical touch 3 million years ago. We communicate through electromagnetic pulses, clean, efficient, safe. But watching this, I finally understand what we lost." "What did you lose?" "The ability to tell another being without words, without logic, without any proof. You matter. Your pain matters. I will stand with you even if it costs me everything." The Krellin turned away from the screen. "Humans are dangerous, Chief Gorash. Not because they're violent, but because they make us remember what we used to be." In the chamber, Hyun felt Kael'thar's heartbeat. It was impossibly slow, one beat every 30 seconds. But it was growing stronger. The ancient being's eye opened fully now, no longer dim. It looked at each human in turn, and something passed between them. A promise without words. An understanding older than language. Hyun smiled through his tears. "Welcome to Terminus 9, he said. "Please stay as long as you need." Around them, the broken pieces of the ship continued to reorganize themselves. The station's structure began to repair. And for the first time in thousands of years, Kael'thar was not alone. 3 hours passed. The humans stood with their hands on Kael'thar's body, and none of them moved. They couldn't. Or perhaps they wouldn't. It was hard to tell the difference anymore. Jiwon watched from a safe distance, her monitoring equipment spread around her. She had given up trying to make sense of the data. Every reading contradicted basic biology. The humans should be exhausted. They should be hungry, thirsty, desperate for rest. Instead, they looked peaceful, almost joyful. "Dr. Jiwon," a voice said behind her. She turned to find Borath, the insectoid ambassador she'd seen at council meetings. He was old, his carapace dulled with age. "May I ask you something?" "Of course, Ambassador." "What are they experiencing? The humans, can you tell?" Jiwon looked at her screens, then back at the scene in the chamber. "I don't know. Their brain activity suggests they're receiving massive amounts of information, but it's not damaging them. If anything, their neural pathways are strengthening." "Information," Borath repeated. "Or memories. I don't understand." The old insectoid moved closer to the window. The Velthros are older than most civilizations. They have seen things that exist nowhere else. Not in books, not in databases, only in their minds. He was quiet for a moment. If Kael'thar is sharing those experiences with the humans, they are receiving a history lesson that spans millions of years. Inside the chamber, Hyun was drowning in time. He saw galaxies form and die. He watched stars collapse into black holes and new stars ignite from their remains. He witnessed the first complex life emerge in a dozen different systems, each one unique, each one precious. But mostly, he experienced loneliness. Kael'thar showed him what it meant to be Velthros. They were few, even in their prime. Perhaps 1,000 in the entire galaxy. They lived for millions of years, long enough to watch civilizations they loved crumble to dust. They were too different to truly connect with shorter-lived species. Too powerful to live among them without causing fear. So they wandered, they observed. They helped when they could, moving asteroids away from populated worlds, seeding dead planets with the potential for life. But they did it alone. Always alone. One by one, the Velthros began to fade. Not from age or disease. From isolation. Hyun understood now that loneliness was not just an emotion for these beings, it was physical. They needed connection the way humans needed air. Without it, their light dimmed. Their crystal bodies grew brittle. They died. Kylthar had watched his kind disappear. First hundreds, then dozens, then only a handful. Finally, he was the last. The last Velthros in a galaxy full of life, and utterly alone. He could have faded quietly. But then he heard something that changed everything. The memory shifted. Hyun saw Earth from space. Saw the first radio transmissions leaving the planet. Most were meaningless noise, but some were different. The Voyager Golden Record. Messages of greeting sent into the void, not seeking conquest or resources, just connection. "We want to know you," the messages said. "We want to share our world with you." Kelthar had listened to those messages for decades. He studied humanity from afar, watched them stumble into space with primitive rockets, saw them make first contact with other species, awkward and afraid but always reaching out, always trying to understand. And he made a decision. If he was going to die, he would die trying to reach the species that still believed connection was possible. The journey had nearly killed him. His body was too old, too weakened. By the time he reached Terminus 9, he had nothing left. He crashed. He was dying. But then Hyun walked through the radiation and touched his face. And for the first time in 1,000 years, Kelthar felt hope. Hyun came back to himself slowly. Tears covered his face. His hand was still on Kelthar's crystalline skin, and he could feel the ancient being's gratitude like warmth from a fire. "I understand," Hyun whispered. "I understand why you came." Beside him, Hana gasped. "Did you see that too? All of it?" "The loneliness," Teo said quietly. "I felt the loneliness." Other humans nodded. They had all experienced the same memories, the same understanding. They were connected now, not just to Kelthar, but to each other. Something had changed in them, something fundamental. Outside the chamber, more beings gathered. Word had spread beyond Terminus 9. Ships arrived from nearby systems. The corridor outside the quarantine zone filled with representatives from dozens of species, all watching the humans and the Velthros. An elderly human woman pushed through the crowd. Her name was Myung-hee, and she was the highest-ranking human official on the station. She had been in meetings for hours, trying to explain to the Galactic Council what was happening. "We need to talk about what comes next," Gorash said, intercepting her at the barrier. "Not now," Myung-hee said. "Ambassador, the Council is demanding answers. The radiation has changed, but it's still present. The structural damage is severe, and the humans have been in there for 3 hours without food or water. Then get them food and water, but don't ask them to leave." Gorash's scales rippled with frustration. "This is a dangerous situation." "Yes," Myung-hee agreed. "It's dangerous because it's real. That creature in there has lived for millions of years. It has crossed the galaxy. And it came here because humanity sent out messages saying we weren't afraid to connect with something unknown. Now you want me to tell those humans to walk away because it's uncomfortable for us? I want you to think about the station's safety." "I am. Kelthar could have destroyed this station when he crashed. He didn't. He's been directing his remaining energy to minimize damage. He's trying to protect us even while dying." Myung-hee looked through the window at the scene inside. "Safety isn't just about walls and weapons, Chief. Sometimes it's about trust." Gorash said nothing. He had no response to that. Inside, the connection deepened. Hyun felt Kelthar's consciousness more clearly now. It wasn't words or even images anymore. It was understanding, pure and complete. He knew that Kelthar could heal. The Velthros body was designed to regenerate, but it required something most species couldn't provide. Not technology, not medicine, just presence. The kind of deep, genuine connection that told a being it mattered, that it wasn't alone. Humans could provide that. They were built for it. Their mirror neurons, their capacity for empathy, their stubborn need to connect even when logic said to walk away. These weren't weaknesses. They were exactly what Kelthar needed to survive. But there was more. Hyun sensed something deeper in Kelthar's consciousness. An offer. A gift. The Velthros had knowledge. Millions of years of observation, of understanding how the universe worked. not just physics and chemistry, the deeper patterns, how life connected across vast distances, how consciousness emerged from complexity, how civilizations could thrive or fail based on a single choice. Kelthar wanted to share this knowledge, not with governments or militaries, with anyone who would listen, anyone who would learn. And in return, all he asked was to not be alone. Hyun looked up at the massive crystalline face above him, at the eye that held stars that weren't stars, at the being who had traveled so far just to find someone who would touch his face and say hello. Yes, Hyun said aloud. Stay with us, teach us, let us learn from you. The other humans echoed his words. Stay with us. Kelthar's light pulsed once, bright and clear. A wave of warmth washed over everyone in the chamber. And across every screen in the galaxy, beings watched as the agreement was made. A human and a Veltros, the smallest and the largest, connected. The healing took 12 days, not because it had to. Kelthar could have regenerated faster, but he chose to go slowly, to let the process unfold naturally, to give the station time to adjust. More humans came to help. First dozens, then hundreds. They worked in shifts, always keeping at least 20 people in contact with Kelthar at any given time. They brought blankets and sat against his crystalline body. They talked to him about their lives, their families, their dreams. They sang songs. They told jokes. Kelthar listened to everything. Jiwon set up a research station just outside the chamber. She monitored not just the humans, but the changes happening in the space around them. The radiation had completely transformed. What had been deadly now felt almost welcoming. Plants she brought as test subjects didn't die. They thrived. Growing faster than normal. It's like the energy is learning what life needs, she told Myung-hee during one of the ambassador's visits. Kelthar isn't just healing himself, he's healing the space around him. The station's structure repaired itself too. Metal that had been torn apart began to fuse back together. Not welded, not bolted. Just rejoined, as if it remembered being whole. Engineers watched in amazement as systems they'd declared beyond repair started functioning again. Hyun continued to visit daily, though he no longer stayed for hours. His body needed rest, food, normal human things. But every morning before his shift, he would come and place his hand on Kelthar's side. On the 5th day, he brought Daehyun with him. The boy was 7 years old, the son of 2 Korean scientists who worked on the station. He had slipped away from his parents once already to see Kelthar, and they decided it was safer to let him visit officially. Daehyun stood at the entrance to the chamber, his small hand gripping Hyun's tightly. Is he really a god? The boy whispered. No, Hyun said gently. He's just very old and very lonely. Like your grandfather was, remember? Before he came to live with us? Daehyun nodded slowly. His grandfather had died 2 years ago, but the boy still remembered the quiet sadness in the old man's eyes before family surrounded him again. Can I say hello? Daehyun asked. Of course. They walked together to where Kelthar rested. The boy reached up and placed his tiny hand on the crystalline surface. His eyes went wide. He's warm, Daehyun said with wonder. And he's happy, I can feel it. He's happy we're here. Hyun felt tears prick his eyes. Yes, he is. That moment was captured by a news drone and broadcast across the galaxy. A small human child, fearlessly touching a being that had terrified civilizations. The image became a symbol. Within days, it was everywhere. But not everyone saw it as beautiful. In the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Velric of the Tal Shar Empire stood before the assembly. His species was old, powerful, and deeply suspicious of change. We must discuss the human-Velthros connection, Velric said, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast room. What we're witnessing is unprecedented. Humans have gained access to knowledge and technology far beyond their development level. This creates an imbalance of power. Myung-hee, representing humanity, stood to respond. The knowledge Kelthar shares isn't a weapon. It's understanding. He's teaching us about connection, about how civilizations can survive by supporting each other. And if humans use that knowledge for conquest? Velric challenged. Then we'll be no different than any other species that's tried conquest. We'll fail, just like they did. Myung-hee looked around the chamber. But I don't think that's what worries you, Ambassador. I think you're afraid that we're learning something your people forgot. The chamber went silent. Careful, human, Velric said softly. I'm always careful. But I'm also honest. Myung-hee pulled up a display showing images from across the galaxy. Since the news spread about Kelthar and the humans, something interesting has happened. Your own people have started gathering, not for military purposes. Just gathering, touching, talking, being present with each other. The images showed Talshar citizens in groups, their normally solitary species standing close together. Similar scenes played out on worlds across multiple systems. Species that had evolved past physical contact were experimenting with it again. Civilizations that had replaced emotional connections with digital efficiency were rediscovering the old ways. Kelthar isn't making humans powerful, Myung-hee said. He's reminding everyone what connection means. And yes, that's dangerous, because it means change. But change isn't the same as threat. Borath, the old insectoid ambassador, spoke up. I support the human position. I have studied this matter carefully. What humans are doing with Kelthar is not acquisition of power. It is recovery of something lost. Lost? Velric demanded. Yes, lost. Borath's wings rustled sadly. My mate died 30 years ago. We had been together for 2 centuries. When she passed, I followed protocol. I reported her death, arranged her recycling, and returned to work the next day. Efficient, logical, proper. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice cracked slightly. I never said goodbye, never sat with her, never let myself feel the grief. Because my species decided 3 million years ago that such things were inefficient, and I have been empty ever since, not dead, but not truly alive either. Borath looked directly at Velric. That is what we lost. The ability to sit with pain, with joy, with each other. To be inefficient and messy and gloriously, stubbornly present. Humans kept that ability. And now they're showing us it still matters. The council chamber remained quiet. Then, slowly, other ambassadors began to speak. Some supported Velric's concerns. But more supported humanity's right to continue their connection with Kelthar. The vote, when it came, was narrow. But it was enough. On Terminus 9, Hyun was working in the engine room when his communicator beeped. It was Myung-hee. The council has made their decision, she said. Kelthar is permitted to remain at the station. But there are conditions. What conditions? He must teach anyone who wants to learn, not just humans. And the station must establish an institute for studying connection. A formal one. Hyun smiled. I think Kelthar will be happy with that. There's more. They want you to head the institute. Me? Hyun nearly dropped his tools. Ambassador, I'm an engineer. I fix machines. And now you'll help fix something more important. Hyun, you walked into radiation that should have killed you. You touched a dying god. You started something that's spreading across the galaxy. Like it or not, you're the right person for this. Hyun thought about it. Thought about his quiet life, his simple routine. Then he thought about Kelthar, alone for 1,000 years. About Dae-hyun's small hand touching crystal. About Borath's grief, carried for 3 decades in silence. Okay, he said. I'll do it. That evening, Hyun visited Kelthar. The chamber had changed completely. The debris was gone. The walls had been reinforced. Comfortable spaces had been created where people could sit near the Veltros. Kelthar's body glowed brightly now. His crystal structures had regrown, more beautiful than before. When Hyun placed his hand on the familiar surface, the connection felt clear and strong. Images filled Hyun's mind. Not memories this time, possibilities. He saw the institute that would be built. Saw beings from hundreds of species coming to learn. Saw children playing near Kelthar while he told them stories of the ancient universe. Saw old enemies sitting together, talking, finding common ground through shared presence. He saw a future where connection was valued again. where efficiency took second place to understanding, where no one died alone. Is this what you hoped for? Hyun asked. The answering warmth told him yes. Yes, and more than Kael'thar had dared dream possible. Around them, other humans settled in for the evening shift. Teo arrived with playing cards. Hana brought a new plant she wanted Kael'thar to see. Ji-won appeared with more monitoring equipment and a thermos of tea. They didn't need to be there. Kael'thar was healed now, stable and strong, but they came anyway, because that's what connection meant. Not just showing up when needed, but showing up because you wanted to, because existence was richer when shared. Hyun leaned against Kael'thar's side and smiled. The universe was vast and cold and full of wonders. But here, in this chamber, surrounded by friends and an ancient being who had traveled across the galaxy to find them, Hyun felt warm. He felt home. 6 months after Hyun first touched Kael'thar's face, Terminus 9 looked completely different. The damaged sectors had been rebuilt, but not the way they were before. The new construction incorporated Kael'thar's body into the station's structure. His crystalline form became part of the architecture, supporting beams and providing gentle light. Comfortable spaces surrounded him where people could gather, talk, and simply be present. The Interspecies Empathy Institute opened 3 months after the council's vote. Hyun stood at the entrance on opening day, uncomfortable in formal clothes, wishing he was back in his engineering coveralls. Ji-won stood beside him, equally uncomfortable but hiding it better. "Ready?" she asked. "No," Hyun admitted, "but let's do it anyway." They opened the doors. The beings who entered were not what Hyun expected. He'd imagined diplomats and scientists. Instead, the first person through the door was an elderly Krellin woman. Her wings were faded with age, and she moved slowly. "I want to learn touch," she said simply. "My species stopped physical contact 3 million years ago. I want to know what we lost." Behind her came a young Talshar warrior, his scales bright and unmarked by battle. "I want to understand why my troops hesitate to follow orders. They spend too much time talking, asking how each other feels. It makes them inefficient. I need to fix this." "Or," Ji-won said gently, "maybe you need to understand why they're doing it." The warrior's eyes narrowed. Then, slowly, he nodded. They came in dozens that first day. Hundreds by the end of the week. Beings from across the galaxy, all seeking something they couldn't name, or something they'd lost so long ago they'd forgotten it existed. Kael'thar taught them all, not with words. Words were too limited. Instead, he shared experiences. He let them touch his surface and feel what he'd felt across millions of years. The joy of witnessing new life, the sorrow of isolation, the desperate hope that kept him searching for connection. Some couldn't handle it. They pulled away, retreated to the cold comfort of logic and efficiency, but most stayed. Most learned. The Krellin woman was one of the first successes. After 3 weeks of sessions with Kael'thar, she began experimenting with physical touch. First just brushing against other Krellins as she passed. Then brief contact. Then, one day, she embraced her daughter for the first time in 40 years. The daughter came to the institute the next day, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she told Hyun. "I have my mother back." The Talshar warrior took longer. His people prided themselves on strength, on independence. But slowly, session by session, he began to understand. His troops weren't becoming weak. They were becoming a unit. Real connection made them stronger, not weaker. 6 months in, he brought his entire command to the institute. They spent a week there, learning. When they left, they were different. Still warriors. Still disciplined. But no longer alone. Stories like this spread. More beings came. The institute expanded, added teachers. Humans, mostly, at first. But gradually, members of other species who had learned from Kael'thar began teaching too. The Krellin woman became an instructor. The Talshar warrior ran programs for other military units. Hyun watched it all with quiet amazement. He still spent his mornings with Kael'thar, still placed his hand on the crystalline surface and felt the warmth of their connection. But now, he shared that gift with others. One morning, Boreth came to visit. The old insectoid moved slower than before, his carapace even more faded. But his eyes were brighter. "I'm dying," Boreth said without preamble. "The doctors give me perhaps 3 months." Hyun felt his chest tighten. "Ambassador, I'm sorry." "Don't be. I've lived a long life. But I wanted to ask you something." Boreth moved closer to Kael'thar. "May I spend my final time here, near him?" "Of course, but why?" "Because I don't want to die alone. Because I spent 30 years alone after my mate died, and I understand now what that cost me. I want to feel connection again before I go." Hyun placed his hand on Boreth's shoulder. It was the first time he'd touched the ambassador. "You won't be alone." Boreth spent his last weeks in the institute. Various beings visited him every day. They sat with him, shared memories, held his aging hands. When he finally passed, he was surrounded by friends from a dozen species. At his memorial, the Galactic Council held a moment of silence. Not the formal, brief pause that was customary. A real moment. 5 full minutes where thousands of beings across multiple worlds simply stopped and remembered Boreth. Remembered what he had taught them about grief and connection. It was, several ambassadors noted, highly inefficient. It was also beautiful. The changes spread beyond Terminus 9. On worlds across the galaxy, beings were relearning old habits. Species that had evolved past family units began forming them again. Civilizations that had replaced physical gatherings with digital meetings started meeting in person. It wasn't universal. Many species resisted. Many individuals rejected the new ways, clinging to efficiency and logic. But enough changed that the galaxy itself began to shift. The most dramatic change came from the Velthros themselves, or rather, from their absence. Ji-Won made the discovery while reviewing Kael'thar's biological data. She found patterns that shouldn't exist. Genetic markers for reproduction, but altered, changed. As if the species had deliberately removed their ability to create offspring. When she asked Kael'thar about it through their connection, the truth poured out. The Velthros had made a choice, millions of years ago. They had seen how their power frightened other species. How their size and abilities created barriers to connection. So they had stopped reproducing, let their numbers dwindle, chosen extinction rather than isolation. Kael'thar showed Ji-Won the memory of that decision. The last gathering of the Velthros, all of them together for the final time. The vote had been unanimous. Better to fade away than to exist alone. But they had left something behind. A gift. The knowledge of how they had made their choice was encoded in their genetic structure. Any species advanced enough to read it could do the same. Could choose to change themselves in fundamental ways. The Velthros had hoped someone would find this knowledge, would understand it, would use it not for power, but for connection. Ji-Won shared this discovery with Hyun in the quiet of the early morning. Just the two of them and Kael'thar in the chamber. They gave up everything, she said, her voice shaking, their entire species, just for the possibility that someday someone would learn from them. Hyun looked up at Kael'thar's glowing form. And someone did. The implications were staggering. Species across the galaxy now had the theoretical ability to modify themselves. Not for war, not for advantage, but to become better at connection. To evolve in reverse, back toward the social bonds their ancestors had possessed. The Galactic Council debated for months about whether to release this information publicly. In the end, they chose transparency. The knowledge became available to all. Most species did nothing with it. But some began cautious experiments. The Krellin started a program to restore their capacity for physical touch. The Tal Shar began studying their own mirror neuron systems, looking for ways to enhance empathy without losing their strength. It would take generations to see the full results, maybe centuries, but the seed was planted. 1 year after Hyun first walked through the radiation, he stood with Dae-hyun in the observation area outside Kael'thar's chamber. The boy was taller now, his 8th birthday approaching. "Teacher Hyun?" Dae-hyun asked. "Will there be more Velthro someday?" Hyun considered the question carefully. I don't know. Kael'thar is the last of his species, but maybe that's not the point. What is the point? The point is that he came here. He shared everything he knew. He showed us that connection is more important than power or efficiency or even survival. Hyun knelt down to meet the boy's eyes. The Velthros might be gone, but what they taught us will live forever. Dae-Hyun thought about this. Then he smiled. Like seeds. Teacher Ji-won says even when a plant dies, its seeds can grow new plants. Exactly like seeds. They watched as a group of students entered the chamber for their morning session. Humans, Krellins, Talshar, and species Hyun didn't recognize. They moved together to Kael'thar's side, placed their hands on his surface, and began to learn. Inside the connection, Kael'thar shared a new memory. Not of the past this time, but of the future. He showed them all what he hoped for. A galaxy where no species evolved into isolation. Where technology enhanced connection rather than replaced it. Where beings of all kinds could touch, communicate, and understand each other. Where no one died alone. The vision faded. The students opened their eyes, many with tears on their faces. They looked at each other, these beings who had been strangers an hour ago, and something passed between them. Understanding, friendship, the beginning of connection. Hyun felt the familiar warmth in his chest. He thought about the day he'd walked through deadly radiation, driven by nothing but the simple knowledge that someone shouldn't die alone. He'd had no plan, no grand vision, just compassion. And from that one moment, from that one choice, the galaxy had changed. He looked up at Kael'thar, at his enormous friend who glowed with gentle light. The Veltros was happy. Hyun could feel it through their bond. Happy to share his knowledge. Happy to have purpose again. Happy to watch beings connect. Happy to not be alone. Thank you for coming, Hyun whispered. Thank you for finding us. Warmth flooded through him. Gratitude, joy, and something else. Something that felt like a smile, though Kael'thar had no mouth to smile with. Around them, Terminus 9 continued its work. Ships came and went, species traded and talked and sometimes argued. But in the heart of the station, in the chamber where a dying god had been given new life, something precious had taken root. Connection. Real, messy, inefficient, glorious connection. And it was spreading, one touch at a time, across the stars.